Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to finally start working on the form. We're finally there. But more specifically, this video is going to touch on layout. Let's get started. In our Visual Studio Code, we last built the application. But the interesting thing is that you can also run npm run start. And what this is going to do, it is going to run the application locally. Now, if we open this and inspect it inside of the console, you may see some errors, obviously, because the API wouldn't work because you're on a local server, but that's not really what's important here. What's important here is that we can still add the parameters. So I could use form name equals lures, and voila, I'm inside of my lures container. So what this is going to enable us to do is be able to make modifications. And so we're going to work on the layout first while we have this capability and save us the time of not having to constantly rebuild the application and redeploy it into SharePoint. Let's continue. Inside of our Lures container, we're going to start by working with some Material UI components. The first thing that we're going to add in the Lures container is we're going to work with the grid component from Material UI. Obviously, what we're going to need is to look at the documentation, and let's go ahead and bring this in. And this is going to be a functional component. Clean our code. In our return statement, we're going to be adding this. And so if we go in here and we delete these items because we don't need them, we're going to be creating our form. And by the way, we're going to be working on this SharePoint form called Lures. Let's go ahead and look at the settings for this list. In the list settings, you'll notice that we have a title, the lure type, which is a choice field, weight, depth, length, color. The first thing that we want is to have a title for the form. So let's go ahead and start with that. By the way, you'll notice that mathematically 8 plus 4 is 12, 4 plus 8 is 12. All the grid is a 12 column version of the layout. So for the purposes of the title, we probably want to extend that across the entire screen. So I'm going to go ahead and put that as the entire width of the screen. Back to my React components. Let's go with heading 6. I like heading 6. So we're going to import the typography component from Material UI. And let's get rid of paper because apparently we're not using that. So let's look for heading 6 and go ahead and copy that into our Visual Studio Code. For our title to our form, it's going to be called Lures Form. If I save that, I go back to my application, you can tell that it's my form is here centered. And if we click on Flex, you can already see how the grid is working. The title of this form isn't centered very well. Let's fix that, shall we? Let's add some, set it up to set display flex. And if you click on this little icon on the right, it gives you options. And I'm thinking that we could probably use something like justify content. So here we have justify content. And if we select center, oh, look at that. So we could probably put a style on the grid to set it to flex and justify content. So let's do that. So on the grid, we're going to use the SX property, which the SX property is basically like styling. And so we're going to set it to display flex. And again, the IntelliSense is just phenomenal on this. I love it. And we said that justify content would be set to center. So if we save it and our form has repopulated, look at that, it's centered for us. So this is going to be our lures form. The next thing we're going to do is we go back to the SharePoint list. We're going to add a title field, which is the reality is the title field. If we look at the list, it's the name of the lure. Obviously, I don't want to call it title. On the front end, what the user sees, I probably want to put the lure name. So let's work on that next. We're going to probably need the text field component for this. Let's copy this into our application. We're probably going to make it span 6 columns for the next two so they can be side by side. Let's go ahead and add our text field, and let's import that from Material UI. This is going to be a required field. The ID of it, because this is internal, I'm going to say it's title. The label on it, again, this is what the user sees, lure name. The default value, we're just going to leave it blank for now, and we can save that. If we go back to our form, there it is, lure name, and now we can start typing the name of the lures there. As you can see, this control is working. Let's create a select menu, bring in the form control and the select from Material UI. Bring this in, and on our actual component, let's bring this form control into our form. We're going to bring this into this section here. For now, let's comment this out because we don't need it, and we don't need the handle change for now. And as far as the values, let's go to the list, and here on the word type, we're going to have a few values. I'm going to do just 3 for now, so you can see the control working. Let's go ahead and paste this in here for now. We're going to say jig is the value, as well as the drop down, spinner. Make sure that we put it in quotations because this is a string. And spoons is going to be our last value. And we can get rid of this now. And our label is going to be lure type. Let's change these demo buttons to say lure type. And let's leave it as lure type select. And our name of our control is called lure type. Form control, variant standard. Also, you notice that it has full width here. So that's going to encompass the entire width of the grid area. Let's do the same thing for our text field here. Let's add full width just like the other control has. We go back to our form and look at that. They're nice and even right next to each other. Doesn't get any better than that. Let's go back to our SharePoint list. What we have is a weight and depth. Go back to our component. I'm going to copy this text. Actually, let's copy the entire grid now that I think about it. Make it easier on ourselves. Copy this twice, and basically this is going to be called weight, and the ID on this one was length, and on this one we're going to call it the label weight, and the label is going to be length. Let's make sure we get our internal names correct. So if you hover over it, you'll see on the bottom the URL. It says the actual name. So right there, obviously, it's with a capital W, and depth was a capital D. So let's go back and change those things. So it was depth that we needed actually. Depth. And as far as weight, it was with a capital W. So let's change that for the IDs. So we want to keep some level of consistency between what we show on the SharePoint list and what we have on our component that we're building out. So if we save that, go back to the form, and there it is. You can see that weight and depth, and these are required. But this is just showing you an example of how you work with the grid. If you make changes to it, you can certainly do that. You can say, okay, you know what? I don't want these things to be just one. I don't want them to just show up side by side. Maybe you want them on their own row. So you would just change it to 12. And this is going to be really fast for changing the layout. Like you can see already that the change on the layout is awesome. The amount of work that you can do by setting up the layout this way. Well, this is going to do it for this video. I do not want to go too long. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, give it a like. If you think someone else could benefit, please share it. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment and subscribe if you can. It's free for you and it really helps me out. Finally, if you can, go ahead and click on that bell to let you know when the next video is added.